talking and my mic is muted. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. That was probably the worst way to intro this. What can I say? We don't always do this, apparently, on time or professionally.
Whoa. Hold on.
I don't always do this. I didn't say we.
Yeah, you did. Check the tape. You already got enough editing to do.
Wow. So, has it ever been on time? One time. So, I got Dad Bods United, DB. Hi. And special guest, a community member from Dad Bod's stream over on here on Twitch, Bairdian. And we'll get into a little bit more of why he's here and what we're going to talk about in a little bit. We're glad to have him. Hi, Bairdian.
What's going on, y'all?
DB Ruckus is through here. I'm a little frustrated, so take us through the first part. Let's get this going.
The first part. It's not even segmented anymore. Happy Friday, hot mess, everybody. So we're gonna be talking the weeks past. What have you been up to? I mean, look, we've had a bit of a break. I took a bit of a mental health break last week. We were supposed to have an episode up last week. My brain was mush. We got a lot of stuff going on in Casa de DBU right now, and it's been chaotic. So it's been a little bit of a challenge. So we took a bit of a break last week, gave me a chance to refresh my brain. So we're back. So in the last couple weeks, Andy, what the hell have you been up to? Good talk.
TikTok, website creation, because you kind of put me onto like doing my own merch for a little bit, so that's what I'm doing. Oh man, everything and anything. Trying to keep afloat financially, trying to do my YouTube vlogs for my fitness journey that I'm doing, which is consistent now on my YouTube channel. Editing for others, editing for myself. Thinking about things to talk about on this podcast, which is increasingly harder the more we do. Just to think of topics that people might want to listen to or what we might actually enjoy doing. So the usual kind of stuff. Lots
Honestly,
of thinking and not a lot of execution.
Part of the skill of a podcast I'm quickly discovering is that like lead up to it and trying to figure out what the heck you're going to talk about and how it's going to engage the audience, how we're going to have fun with it, what we can do with it. And it is an adventure in itself. But two questions out of all of that. Number one, when's the merch by Andy dropping? And number two, how's the journey going?
Merch by Andy drops on Monday, March 1st. I will have that good to go. If you're on my channel currently, if you go down, you'll see it's coming soon with no link, but it'll be fun. The only reason I did it is because, like I say, you turned me on to the idea of putting my own merch out that I control. I control the pricing, I control the shipping, I control the quality of the product that comes in. I can find hats because there's so many people that put hats, but you go to a store like Stream Elements or Streamlabs or all this stuff, you're kind of held hostage to just the things that they want to provide you. Right. Well, it doesn't take that much to run a website. At the end of the day, like month to month, it's not all that expensive, and yearly, it's not that expensive. It's just taking the time and making it happen. So it was fun to build. I'm glad it's going live. And then my journey, could be better. I've lost weight. Yes, I've lost weight.
Good.
I think I'm down 15 pounds since I started vlogging.
Sweet.
But I've had some lazy days. I got really drunk last Friday, and that kind of set me on. Saturday was a cheat day because of how I felt, so I had like pasta and bread and 3 donuts at dinner.
Oh my god.
So I was craving a donut while I was drinking, so I my drinking was vodka Diet Coke, so I stayed on point for that. But I haven't gained. There's no carbs or no calories in that stuff. Come on, please.
Oh, here we go.
But I maintained the same weight. I didn't lose anything, but I didn't gain anything, so it's a victory. I don't think I'm going to do cheat days because I don't have the actual discipline the day after.
Right.
When I'm run down mentally, there's nothing I want to do that's healthy, so I probably won't do a cheat day for myself. As far as alcohol is concerned, I might like have a burger with a bun for once, but I'm not going to involve alcohol, I don't think. So we'll see.
I'm going to quietly sip my gin and tonic then.
Yeah. But no, it's been going well. It's keeping me accountable. I started skipping today, or yesterday rather, and I'm keeping up with it. That's why I started accountability, and it's been holding me accountable, because I don't want people to look at me as like, oh, you're just a failure looking for views. I want this for myself, and it happens that I want to keep working at it. I'm not sure it would happen. Not sure what would happen if the camera turned off though. So
all right, well, fair play
for me. Yeah, what's going on with you, man?
Not much. I'm excitedly awaiting the drop of MLB The Show in April, so I'm not touching any baseball right now. I'm dabbling back in Warcraft, which is a scary adventure in itself. And I've discovered a strong enjoyment in Apex, which is puzzling because Apex is really good. I think I've said that before, but now I'm really I've been playing it at least twice a week now, like on stream live, and having a hell of a good time with it. So those have been kind of the two go-to games right now. I've been WoW and Apex. I just released a lineup of international merch for the upcoming Euro Cup and Olympics. So there's 20 countries and 10 more dropping on Monday. And then my wife's line, Mombods United, is actually dropping this Thursday, March the 4th. So we're very, very excited for that next step. But other than that, man, it's been crazy. We're looking at moving right now. So we've been meeting with finance people and banks and mortgage brokers and real estate agents, and seeing houses is incredibly difficult during COVID, but it's been good. It's good. It's good.
Yeah, that's not something I'm even looking at right now. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm gonna I don't know, figure out how to wake up next week.
Dude, it's crazy. It's a crazy time of year. It's a crazy time period because we've been under lockdown pandemic for last year. So right now, we're in a position where our property value is through the roof, and if we move out of the city of Toronto and into a suburban area north of the city, we can get so much more bang for our buck and really not change our mortgage or our situation financially. So it just makes sense for us because we're outgrowing this house faster than I can say outgrowing this house. So on that note, I think we're going to forego. There wasn't any crazy releases or gaming wise over on this day throughout history. There was a couple cool ones. But most of them were port versions or other console versions or international versions that didn't release on release date. Birthday wise, we had a couple cool ones, and I'm rushing to do this because I really want to get to talking to our guest because he keeps looking at me through the monitor, and I'm getting uncomfortable because we haven't introduced him yet. So we had singer Michael Bolton turned 68 today, Erica Badu 50 today, author Victor Hugo, clothing designer Levi Strauss, and Johnny Cash all had birthdays today. Super cool. If you share a birthday with any of these people today or this weekend, happy birthday. If not, we'll get to your birthday eventually. So the reason we are all here today and chatting is because Andy and I decided that it would be cool to talk about the mental impact of not only streaming, content creation, but also of gaming in general, and how that plays into people's lives, relationships, and just general well-being. Turns out one of my community members, whom I have a great deal of respect for and is super fun to hang out with and chill and shoot the shit with, our buddy Bairdian over, is it this way? Is it going to show up this way? No, that way.
That way, yeah.
Yeah, that way. Happens to work in the field of therapy. As I say that with a question mark and not without conviction. Bairdian, welcome to the show. Why don't you give us a little rundown on who you are and all that good stuff.
Well, I appreciate being on with y'all. This is going to be a blast. But yes, I am a therapist. And the first thing that people say, what, a physical therapist? No, I'm a mental health therapist. I have a background, a sociology degree as my bachelor's, and then I went to grad school, got a master's in social work and a master's in public health. And with that, I became a licensed social worker, where I first began working with adolescents in an inpatient place, where kids actually stay, and I do therapy once a week, family therapy, and then I moved on to clinic-based things, where I started to do individual therapy with adults, children, adolescents, all ranges. I've worked with lots of different diagnoses. So when I think about what people are going through during this really tough time, I've gotten a pretty big snapshot of what are the things that people have been going through. And then seeing these things along with streaming, and whether it's streamers themselves, and I've seen people having to take themselves breaks themselves from streaming, but also viewers where it seems like the community has gotten to them a little bit and just needing breaks from that online social. So there's so many interesting aspects that we have within this society that we're living in now that, you know, it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about with y'all.
Nice. Yeah, it was exciting to find out your field of work, and I'm sure like the first thing people ask, like, "Oh, so what do you think of me?" And it's like, well, yeah, I think that was pretty much the first thing I asked you anyway. But it's got to be tough right now with the pandemic and like people being so much more isolated over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
Like are the things that you're seeing now different than things you would have seen 12 months ago, or are they the same things just amplified?
Well, you know, the interesting part about that is that the people that I'm seeing now are not the same people that I was beginning to see 6 months ago.
Okay.
You know, and I think it really speaks to resiliency in a lot of different places. That when we were in the pandemic for 3 months and 4 months, people were looking forward to, okay, we just got a couple more weeks of this. We just got another a month of this. And it turns out, you know, we're almost a year deep into this. And so now the people that I thought were struggling or would have been coming to therapy at the beginning of the pandemic are actually coming in now. And they're having lots of feelings of isolation, loneliness, to where, you know, they're kind of fed up with this online life that a lot of people have turned to. That, you know, the social interaction over the internet is such a great thing to have, but it does not replace that face-to-face interaction. So 6 months ago, it was just kind of normal business for therapy, and probably a little bit of expanded because people were able to go to telehealth and have more slots open for that. So it became more accessible. But now I'm starting to see a lot more of the clients who are really struggling with the pandemic. And it's now that's becoming a norm of seeing a lot more of acute depression and anxiety. Where those are the two main diagnoses that I see currently when you're talking about people that have never dealt with mental illness before.
That's interesting. I mean, you could kind of figure it. Like, I look at it from a streamer's perspective. It's weird because I can hold effectively a conversation with myself or a wall of text, but I find myself stumbling over words conversing with somebody face to face nowadays, or I really struggle to see someone's full face because I'm used to talking to them through a mask. It's a really strange dynamic, in my opinion, about of how we're moving forward in a society right now, because it's something that we've never dealt with before. Like, to even look at you face to face right now, like, I'm having trouble making contact with my computer screen or my camera because I'm not used to talking to people outside of my wife and kids. I don't see full face really. Like, it's been 12 months for us. Like, we've been locked down pretty hard up here. So
I definitely get it. I definitely get it. I mean, it's something that I do every single day with my job, to looking people in the face. But it's definitely something different where the facial communication that you would normally have just is not being used right now with face masks.
I mean, like, I come from like a very Italian background and very European, where it's like, you know, handshake, cheek, or, you know, handshake is such a big sign of respect. Like, we close deals on the job sites and stuff like that. You go to shake hands, it's like what, elbow or nod, or like it's weird. And even like catching people's mannerisms, like it's hard to when you're just seeing the eyes of a person, where you can't tell if there's that level of sarcasm or if there's that jokiness or what it is. It's just a very, staunch conversation. I feel like a lot of the small quips, or like I said, mannerisms, have kind of fallen by the wayside, conversation wise, at least.
Definitely.
I don't know, Andy, how's your experience been with this? I mean, we've like the pandemic side, the lockdown side.
When it first happened, I think I wasn't necessarily like excited that it was happening, but it was like, yeah, I'm going to spend more time on my stream. I'm going to spend more time at home with the kid, the family, that kind of thing. And then it kind of kept on going and going and going. And now I'm at the point where I'm kind of chomping at the bit to get a job. I work for a casino, so I know that's not going to happen anytime soon, especially if there's like a wave 2 or a second strain, that kind of thing. So just applying to jobs and that kind of stuff, just trying not to go stir crazy. But I think I've done okay. I mean, I've had my ups and downs. I am openly on anxiety medication, just from a previous work experience that left me needing to be medicated. So I'm managed as far as dealing with anxiety. Being stuck in the house isn't so bad for me, especially nowadays when I'm doing the fitness stuff. I'm forcing myself outdoors to lose weight. I should have started losing weight at the start of the pandemic, because by now it would have probably done something, but better late than never when it comes to certain things. But I mean, there's always that tie-in between physical health and mental health. Is you start to feel better physically, you can do more, you're getting fresh air, whether it be adrenaline or whatever you're releasing into your body to help them just make you feel better, sunlight, all that kind of stuff. And I live on the West Coast. We get sun with rain in the same day, and the wind blows it away, and it's fine. Like it's we don't get I would like to say there's not a lot of seasonal depression in BC, but at the same time it rains a lot, so probably there is. But it's sunny. It's the West Coast, so we get rain 9 months out of the year. That is our sunshine. So
wow.
I'm sure the pandemic has affected a lot of people out this way, but for me, I've just kind of taken it in stride. I've always been much like we'll just take it as it comes and deal with it then, which isn't great for finances, but it's been okay it's been great for this.
I'm sure that layer, the financial layer, is a whole other. It's just that another layer. I think it all correct me if I'm wrong, Bairdian, but it all kind of falls under a lot of the same umbrellas, I would imagine. Like is it just pieces of an overarching, I don't want to say condition or diagnosis, but like are these all just pieces to that puzzle, or are they like do you unwrap things like that individually, where you're looking at, somebody's anxious about their finances, about work, about home life, family life, like does that all end up sometimes leading down one direction, or are they all splintered and managed individually?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, it's hardly ever just one thing, and when one thing is impaired, for lack of a better word, it affects other parts. And so when you're thinking about, someone's struggle with mental health or the stresses of life, the thing to go about it is that it's like a puzzle where you're having to put a piece together here and a piece together here, and hoping that all of it can stick together, in helping someone deal with those pieces when they fall apart, and how to teach somebody to pick their own pieces up. Because, when I think about health and well-being, the health is not the lack of disease. Health is how well you actually feel on a day-to-day basis. It's how well are you thinking on a day-to-day basis. So it's definitely all those things combined into one. And it could definitely be a messy ball when you really try to unravel it.
Yeah, I could see that. Like there, and I guess there's that old adage about the onion. Like, you start peeling back different layers, and all of a sudden you get so many. You could. I'm sure in your experience, I know because I've got a background in physical health and fitness. Like that's what I went to college for. That was my background. And a lot of the cases of people that were out of shape wasn't for the lack of ability. It was just that lack of mental focus and toughness that allowed them to push themselves beyond a certain comfort zone, or beyond a threshold. And I noticed working with when I was working with some double junior A athletes, there was an on-staff therapist, a sports psychologist, excuse me, that was with them, speaking to them, working, especially when these kids started hitting 17, 18, and had to manage the pressures of, high school grades, getting into colleges, scouts coming to games, the physical and mental workload of the hockey and stuff like that. Like it doesn't take much to break that body down if you start with the mental side of it.
Most definitely. And you never know which one will go first, but if you aren't physically able to do something, it can affect your mental. And when you mentally aren't able to do something, you aren't going to dedicate that physical time that you need to it. And that's how those things just get intertwined with each other.
Yeah, it's tough. That the whole idea, if you look back, even 12 months, 15 months, 18 months ago, the whole idea of mental health was one of those things, like the fringe taboo things, where people didn't really want to talk about it, weren't really comfortable and ready to express it openly, but people knew it was there. And it seemed like it was just starting to gain some momentum in terms of social acceptance, where people were kind of starting to get comfortable, letting it known that they were, either dealing with, mental health issues or trying to work through them. Now it just seems to be like another thing. Like it's just, oh, well, yeah, that person is dealing with anxiety or depression. It's become such commonplace. And I don't say it in like a lighthearted manner. It's very serious stuff. But just the general acceptance, I think, has changed for the better, in that there's a lot more eyes on it. It's a lot more it's much more accepted socially than it was previously, in my opinion. Am I fishing here, or what are your thoughts?
No, I think you're exactly right with that. And I think Andy showed it earlier today on the podcast when he openly said, yes, I have dealt with anxiety. I'm taking medication for it. That within itself is a symbol of where society has taken a step on mental illness, where people can feel safe enough to say, I'm not okay.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest things that I see, that people go so long without acknowledging that they're not okay, because for some reason we've been taught that the norm was to always say that you're okay, or always say that you're fine, or always say that you're moving in the right direction, when none of that is always going to be true. It's so often that when you introduce yourself, or when you shake somebody's hand, you're saying, how are you doing today? I'm good. And it's like, that good is so loaded that it's when someone actually says, oh, I'm having a bad day, that's the shock, rather than someone just saying they're good. And it's like, we don't know if that's actually true or not.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of people, and it's something that always gets said, like you talk about, you go to the doctor if you have a broken leg and you want to manage your pain, they medicate you. A lot of the things that people go through, whether it be anxiety, depression, bipolar disorders, or whatever, that is their pain. It's just not a physical manifestation of that pain, but that is their pain. So like DB said, things are getting better. And I think that has to do with maybe not our generation, but the generation below us are now kind of reaching their 20s, and they're becoming adults, and they've grown up with it's okay to talk about your feelings. Like it's just getting bred into the next line of people that this is just going to be more and more okay. But then you have like the counterpoint is I don't agree with it. People that say, oh, you're too sensitive, or people are too sensitive nowadays. Some people can handle other things, others can't. It's not people are too sensitive. It's just you have to adjust your mannerisms based on the person you're talking to. You can't go to work and say one thing to everybody and expect the same reaction. You're going to get a giggle from somebody, or a shock from somebody else, or absolute, like, I can't work with this person because of what they said. I can't believe they did that. So it's I think it's one thing that I've definitely taken back from my like customer service days is everybody's different. Everybody's unique, and their problems are unique to them. Even though it might be anxiety, it's their anxiety, their problems, and you have to deal with it accordingly. It's kind of like I think, like you said, things are getting better. They're not there yet, but there's so many. It just takes one person to say it's fine. That person tells their friend it's fine, and it gets down the line. So I'm sure you guys you've had it in your families. Mental health at some point in your families, whether it be yourself or your kids or your loved ones or whatever, it's been there.
Well, the interesting thing, like to kind of play devil's advocate with the point you made about like people being soft or too soft or whatever the case is. I think you're right. You kind of got to read the room when you're making certain statements, and you do have to show a certain level of tact and respect. But I do feel that there is a bit of a subculture brewing of people that are taking advantage of the fact that if you step out of line, they're looking to tear you down and shit on you, whether or not it was actually inappropriate or not. Like this idea in a lot of in some respects of cancel culture, where people are just looking for the opportunity to shame somebody rather than actually being offended by it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that, and I guess I clarify that I'm speaking to the masses, that, you know, the good apples.
No, but I mean it's a very valid point. Like, you're making a very valid point. I don't want to take away from that, but like I said,
I get it.
I'm just seeing where there are people that may not be offended by it, but they kind of rally the troops behind it because they don't like it, or they know it'll get enough of a rise.
Yeah.
That now all of a sudden it became offensive, and you're just like, "Oh, I just said hi."
Yeah.
That
reminds me of a story. Just because you said hi, it just reminds me of it's along the same thing about some people getting offended and others not caring. But we all say hello. Everybody says hello. And there was a story years ago. I'm gonna go back like 20 years ago on the news. There's this one guy in God knows where, the United States, and they said, you know what, hello is offensive to me. I don't greet people with the word hell. A very Christian person. He actually started to try and coin heaven-o.
Oh no!
And so instead of hello,
remember that.
it was heaven-o.
I remember that.
And it was just an old dude. He's probably passed away by now, but heaven-o, because he didn't want to associate his greetings with hell.
Oh no!
So just to kind of cater to your point a little bit, is someone always takes offense. In his situation, it was religion that was guiding his thought process, but that could be easily taken in a sense that I'm going to be upset about this because I can be upset about it. And someone in the chat just said mob mentality. With religion, it's very easy to get involved in that mob mentality. So I'm sure in his town, in his area, heaven-o became a thing. I'm sure he was quite happy because I'm sure his clergy was all over it.
Oh no! Now we just offended some town in the U.S.
I wish I knew more, but I was young. I was in my teens, my early teens.
Yeah, that was at least 3 decades ago. So to pull it back on point. So one of the things that we did, one of the reasons why we wanted to bring Bairdian in here is because we are the Parental Gamers podcast. We did want to talk about how the mental health aspect of things is tied into the streaming world and also the video game world, whether it's, you know, the mental health of streamers, like, you know, Bairdian mentioned earlier, people taking mental health breaks. I mentioned it myself, like last Friday, I just didn't have the mental capacity to sit down and do the podcast and hold a conversation. Because I just couldn't generate enough thoughts to sustain something half intelligent. Don't even. I know I can hear you snickering. I'm not even. But you know, we look at now with everybody being home, and one of the things, a lot of people are working from home now. Like working from home has become the big thing, and a lot of businesses are closing and for their physical locations to keep their employees at home. Personally, I can't work from home. I have too many distractions, like too much of this. It'd be like, fill out one piece of paperwork, fill out a customer profile, put it in order, and then I'm playing a game on my computer because it's right here. Just like I'll it'll only be 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, it's the end of the workday. Have you? I don't know if you can speak to this, Bairdian, but like, have you seen an influx in people turning to gaming or the gaming culture as a form of, I guess, escapism with everything going on, or any different situations like that where the games have become kind of a crutch or have become just an even more important piece of a person's life right now?
It's tough to say exactly because statistics about this time period is that's down the line.
Right.
But from my experience, my personal experience as well as people that I have worked with, there has been an increase of video game use because people need something to do. People need time. People need to do something with this extra time that we have. So the use of video games have become increasingly more, and the positive consequences of it as well as the negative consequences have increased along with that. Whether it's people bullying or people using it as a way to cope through this pandemic.
I mean, bullying is a huge, like online bullying, especially in the gaming space. Like, just spend 5 minutes listening to COD, like hot mics, and you will hear some shit that, if you're a good person, will burn your ear holes. I know for myself, like personal experience, I play a lot of FIFA, and if I'm playing like competitive FIFA, I've got my notifications and my messages turned off because some of the death threats and awful stuff that I've seen written, I don't want to justify it, but you can see somebody yelling it out loud when they get their butt kicked. But another thing is to consciously make your thumbs type in all those letters and characters and words. It's one thing to say something mean verbally quickly in like a lapse of judgment. It's another thing to like physically type it out word for word, and then have the goal to send it to somebody.
Especially with an analog stick, because it ain't easy to send messages on console,
right?
That's commitment.
Like I don't know, and it's the world of online anonymity is one thing, but seeing more and more people turn to video games, I worry about video game addictions. I know you sent us some great resources about video game addiction and some of the causes and some of the, I guess, the signs to look at. Like, what are some of the precursors or determinants of someone, maybe getting into or suffering from a video game addiction?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, all diagnoses, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it's schizophrenia, it's all a social construct. And, when we think about a social construct, it's everybody accepting what we see as a society and taking it as commonplace. And when we say, does someone have a video game addiction? There is no direct diagnosis right now, but there is a future diagnoses that I think in the DSM-6, we are currently in the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual of, oh my goodness, the diagnostic statistical manual, where it just has all the diagnoses along with the specifications that internet gaming disorder is going to be something that we see very, very soon. There's a lot of research coming in on it. And what it essentially says is that if you are internet gaming or gaming in general so much that it's causing impairment in other parts of your life, then that would mean that you have an internet gaming disorder. Now, we have to think about when we're in a pandemic with increased use of video games, that it's a little bit different. That just because you play more video games now than you used to, we can't use those same measurements that we did before. But, you know, if you have a kid or an adult where, you know, they have a tough time getting away from the video games, and it's affecting their schoolwork, it's affecting their jobs. When they don't have the video games, they get anxious or irritable. It seems like they're always there, and it's affecting their relationships, their actual social relationships outside of gaming. Then those are some of the things that you can say where it's like, yeah, there is some disorder associated with video games.
Yeah, I mean, I could see myself at certain times falling into that umbrella where, you know, if it's been a high stress week, or, you know, you just get, it's like, I just want my 5 minutes. I gotta, whether it's like some people will turn to TV, and, you know, love my wife and kids and would never, but I'll just tell you, like, there's some nights where you come home and it's like your stress levels are through here. You're just like, I want to sit down. I want to just turn it on for 5 minutes. Just give me the room. Give me the room. I need a break.
I've heard of examples of that. A family of 4, so 2 young daughters and a husband that would come home from work after, I'm assuming, construction. I think that's the story where it came from. And he had himself a little like man cave, as I think most of us do at this point, because it's now socially acceptable to have it. It's either give us a man cave or we're going to start decorating the house so we get our man caves. But he would say to his kids, and his wife was at agreement, because he had such a highly functioning anxiety that he needed a 2-hour wind down time. So he would come home, offload, shower, go to his room, and no one talk to him for 2 hours until he could offload his day, kind of like meditation through video gaming. Right. So in a different sense, we're talking about addiction and video gaming, but he was using it as a therapeutic standpoint so that he could actually be better for his family, so that he didn't pop off at the kids. And I mean, we've all seen videos of gamers yelling at their kids or making a bad move, but this guy was making an active decision. I'm sure it was something he talked to with his partner, to just 2 hours out of my day so that I can wind down and not be upset or angry or angsty or whatever you want to say. So I mean, yes, people are going to get addicted to anything that you throw in front of them that has bright lights and shiny noises. But I definitely think there's a huge therapeutic side for what, not only in streaming, but in video games in general, depending on the style of game you play, or the type of person you might be.
Most definitely. And what I would refer to that as is escapism. And, you know, escapism sounds really bad, but not all escapism is necessarily bad. If you are using video games as a way to handle your outside stressors, if you had a tough day at work, you want to play some video games to let off some steam in a healthy way, then it can be a great way to actually have emotional regulation and stress relief and anxiety prevention. You know, the tough thing that really happens is when there's some other stressor in somebody's life, and then they try to use video games as a way to do that, and then those problems and those feelings and emotions that were not handled in their outside life begin to get externalized in video games. And that's where we see a lot of problematic gaming, like the bullying, like the yelling, getting mad at video games, getting mad at other people across the world who you're playing against in video games. And that's where you see it possibly becoming a problem.
I just wonder, and I know this is kind of like a far-fetched thought process, but I'm just going to roll with it. When we talk about therapeutic thought processes and meditation, that kind of stuff, oftentimes people say, okay, close your eyes, imagine this. So basically, take yourself away from this situation. Where do you see yourself, whether it be a valley with lots of trees or whatever? I feel like the video game world is just a more augmented reality of that. It's a more real thing rather than using your imagination. You're using somebody else's imagination that's already been put in a game to do so. And I am bringing it up just to ask, is there a way to unhealthily over meditate, in the sense that you're taking yourself away from the real world so many times, but you still have the same issue as escapism? Because escapism would be getting away from your problems, but if you use meditation to escape from those problems, you still have to come to reality. And I understand that you can bury yourself in a game for hours, and oftentimes you can forget to eat or drink properly, like depending on, again, what you're playing. But with conventional therapy, as far as meditation, can that still create problems of escapism?
Yeah, I think that's a great thought, and the main thing that I feel about that is just having an end to it. That if you feel that you don't have some sort of a end within your video games, then it can be a problem. Having a RPG that you play and going through that story and escaping within that story is, quite frankly, no different than escaping within a story in a book. It's just a different medium that you're using it through. But if you are constantly trying to go into that reality, that's when it can possibly become a problem, where you're trying to live the actual life that's going on in the game rather than using that as a way to cope with your real world.
So my question to that point would be, Bairdian, when you're looking at escapism and you're using the video games as a coping mechanism, like you mentioned, to kind of clear your mind and kind of use this as your time to kind of unwind and wind down, do you run the risk at that point of not dealing with the stresses and in your real life, where those continue to pile up, those problems continue to exacerbate and get worse effectively, because you're able to diffuse your own situation because you're sitting there, you play your hour of video games, you kind of cool down, you suppress the emotional toll that the day or week or month has taken on you, or you avoid the conversations with your partner because you've finally calmed down, and now you're going back to the dinner table and it's like, no, I'm good. You never really progress through you might have progressed through the game, but haven't really progressed through what's causing you to rely on that game so heavily.
Right. And I think the thing that you're kind of pointing out with that is that playing video games to help deal with emotions is not solving your emotions or working through your emotions with video games.
Got it.
If you have to have a conversation with your partner and you go play video games and calm down and you come back to the dinner table and you don't talk about it, that problem's still going to be there no matter what. And if you don't actually deal with that within that moment, well, you're still going to have that problem with your partner. You're going to still need to have that conversation. So what video games can do is give you a distraction from what is actually going on in your life, or a way to process what is actually going on in your life so that you can enter back into those problems and actually deal with them.
Thank you.
If you aren't actually dealing with them, then you're just going to have those same problems.
That's what I was getting at. I wanted to make sure that there was a clear distinction between the idea of escapism and dealing with it, because I think that's where, at least in my case, I know I have notoriously dropped the ball in some instances where, I'll use a video game. Like, my routine is, come home from work, have dinner with my wife and kids, hang out with them, help my wife put them to bed, and then we'll do our thing, we'll hang out, we'll catch up on our day, and then it's come down here for stream or work on stuff. Or some days it's just like, it's on Thursday nights I play no games. That's my day with my wife. And because Tuesdays we're working on podcasts or merch or whatever the case may be, offline stuff. There are some nights though on those days off where you kind of, it's like, look, I just need half an hour. And after that half hour of, gaming or whatever, or like, with my Switch or reading a book, whatever, if I don't bring back that conversation when I come back upstairs, I'm notorious for shrugging it off because I think I've dealt with it. I was like, okay, no, I'm good. I'm calm now. It's not in my brain. I'm okay. So I've used the video games for what I intended for them to do, but I didn't actually resolve anything. So now on Saturday when I'm not streaming, all of a sudden I'm hyper stressed, like all over the place because not only are the stresses from Friday and Saturday there, but now all the ones that we didn't clear up on Thursday are still there too. So it's like, I think it's very easy to feel good after one of those video game sessions to the point where you avoid talking about, like you said, what actually mattered and what needed to be cleared. I think that's I don't know if you've noticed it from your experience, but I would imagine that might be a step that gets missed or overlooked at times because you feel good at the end of it.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's just like dishes. If you let the dishes pile up and you say, oh, I'm going to go play video games, and you're not going to take care of the dishes, they're still going to be there. If you don't have that conversation, if you don't deal with those feelings and you keep stuffing them inside, they're going to come back and bite you in other ways. You don't do your dishes, you're going to get roaches. You're going to smell up the house. Those things are going to happen. Same thing with feelings. If you don't actually deal with those feelings, they're going to come out in other ways you really don't want. Next thing you know, you're apologizing for that, and you still haven't solved the first problem.
Is that where it gets into that problematic side of things where you get some of the blowouts, some of the emotional blowouts, and where you just, where it kind of overpiles itself? Is that where you start running the risk of, or some of the dangers of not dealing with those emotions?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There is no association of video games and problematic gaming. Video games do not cause you to have problematic behaviors, whether it's the bullying or yelling or getting angry, throwing controllers, all that stuff. Because we've seen all of those things, sadly, over social media. But when you see problematic behaviors, the first thing that I think is what's going on in that person's life? What's going on there? Because they're using the video games as a way to try to maladaptively cope with their feelings. So if you're having a stressor in your real life and you bring it to video games and you're streaming and you end up having a last second goal and you flip out, you aren't mad at that goal. That is those feelings being projected from something else on something that is completely, it doesn't matter. Right. Because at the end of the day, the video games doesn't matter. But that thing that you're upset about before that's actually going on in your life does. And that's where research has shown the association that poor emotional regulation, poor stress management is related and correlated with problematic gaming behaviors.
I know there's certain games that I play that they actually cause me to rage quit, and it's an extreme reaction to a game of, like, well, I'm going to say Rocket League can be the absolutely most frustrating game in the world. And I'm good at it. I can play well, but you have the days where you can't anymore, and you just have like a string of 5 or 6 games and your whole world ends, you rage quit. But the one thing that I get from the video games I don't get from like the real world problems is if I rage quit on a video game, I'm going to go back and play it. But if I have something in my life that's causing me angst, or I want to rage quit on that particular moment in my real life, I'm not going back to it. Like if I can avoid it, I'm going to avoid it. But day in and day out, I will go back to Rocket League, I will go back to Apex, I will go back to PUBG, and I will play it. But if you put those same situations in my real life, I'm going to try and avoid those like anybody's business. And it's just interesting to think when you talk about like using it as escape, but we keep going back to it. But how do you escape from? I guess you don't want to escape from real life because real life's the important part. Completely lost my train of thought. I just know that there's a lot to do with why the disconnect. Why do I keep coming back to something that is absolutely frustrating me the most? And I guess the same could be said for relationships too. Some relationships aren't healthy, but why do you keep going back to them, even though like there's got to be something that keeps drawing you back to it, but something that's repeatedly like my heart rate goes up playing that game, and my heart rate goes up having certain conversations with people, and I don't have those conversations again, but I'll go back and play Rocket League probably tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a fascinating thing that you're talking about, because when you take a step back and look at like the rage quitting in Rocket League, you can tell yourself, it's like, why did I do that? That's kind of ridiculous. But when you're in that moment, it's that low level of insight when you're so drawn into those games, and that conscientiousness that you have, or that low level of conscientiousness that you have when you're watching that, it's like you aren't relating those two things. And I do the same thing where I'm playing a game of ranked on MLB The Show, and it's one reason why I don't play ranked. I'm acting like it's game 7 of the World Series.
Yeah.
For what?
Yeah.
And I can look at myself then and be like, golly, like, well, why was that being so stupid? But I do it.
Yeah.
And so there's, it's really just keeping that insight that you have outside of the game within the game.
Now, to kind of piggyback off of that, Bairdian, do you have something or strategies maybe like or generalized strategies for those that maybe are in a situation like Andy's where it's easy to blow up at a game but keep going back, but then struggle to deal with their, that situation that might be causing that angst or anxiety that's leading to that blowout? Like, is there a way, or just like I said, a starting point maybe for people? I mean, obviously talking to somebody like yourself, a professional, is probably the more beneficial way to deal with this, and work through the extent of anything that they might have going on in their personal lives. But are there strategies that maybe we can take away that may help us deal with some of those stresses, whether it be a partner, whether it be, I talked about earlier, right now we're going through all this craziness in our personal lives.
Yeah. So I want to preface what I'm about to say with, I'm extremely biased with what I'm about to say. But the first thing that I would say is, and I'm not being trivial with this, is take a deep breath. And when you take a deep breath and actually get yourself within that moment and get some perspective of what's going on, that's going to help within that moment, so you don't do anything too irrational. One thing that I hope people understand, if you lose a game in a video game, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. But it's what you do after that actually matters. Are you feeling sad and then thinking that, oh, I'm worthless, I'm no good because I lost, I'm an idiot, oh, I suck at this? Well, you do anything like that, no matter how trivial the thing is, like a video game is, you're going to bring yourself down. And those behaviors after that can be extremely destructive. But if you can tell yourself after that moment of, man, I lost this one, but I won 2 other ones that I played really well in, or I did this wrong and I think that's something I can fix. Changing and having those, restructuring those thoughts within those moments after taking that deep breath can definitely help within that. And it's not always a situation where people are going to get down on themselves, or it may not even be that deep. But in my eyes and just my training as a therapist, that's kind of the lens that I see it through, of that, like, it's not just I lost the game. It's everything that you feel or think after you lose that game that really matters and shapes how you're going to think about yourself and think about yourself and behave after that.
That's good. It's amazing because it's such, when you look at it, such a simple, simple theory, something simple to put in practice. But it takes a lot, in my opinion, to self-reflect in a positive way. I think the old saying of, we're our own worst critic is very true. And I mean, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got streaming was to go back and watch your VODs. And the first couple times I ever went back to watch my VODs, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I wanted to hide under my desk. I was never going to stream again. Until somebody actually sat down and like, look, dude, you're doing this really well, doing this. Like, when you start to see the things you're doing well and give yourself just the slightest bit of self-praise and confidence, it's amazing how much your attitude can change and how quickly. Like, the negativity is there, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but, I did all these great things. Like, I fixed my lighting. I fixed, I fixed my mic. I sound great. Quality is great. I got a bunch of clips. Like, the community was popping. Everybody was talking. It's like all this. Like, oh man, like I didn't see all those things because I was so worried that I lost that OT shootout in FIFA Weekend League and almost hucked my controller, 3 blocks. It's tough. It can be difficult to view yourself in a positive light sometimes.
I mean, isn't that's kind of like the big thing about mental health and anything, especially when it comes to your like self-care and keeping yourself positive and all these things is we're just monsters of self-doubt, and it's in one fashion it's a good thing because it drives us to become better or do better or be not different, but just always striving to be better is not a good thing, but also accepting the fact that some of the things you're doing, if not most of the things you're doing, are extremely well done. It's easy to look at someone like DB and say, hey, this is what I love about what you're doing, but I can't say the same things about myself because maybe it's a generational thing. You don't get brought up with that pat yourself on the back mentality, but we also have to write resumes and get a job. It's like the only time in our lives that we actually speak well of ourselves is if we're trying to get ourselves hired. Find it extremely hard to do so because really, how do you do it without coming across looking like an arrogant person? But I guess that's the point, is to have a little bit of arrogance. But it doesn't matter. Like, I have friends in the mental health profession. Bairdian, we're gonna probably consider you one after this one, just because I have lots of problems and you seem like you can help me.
He's not. This isn't a joke. Bairdian, man.
But the one thing I've learned is it doesn't. I even in my private life, the people who I consider myself lucky that they want to come to me and confide in me with their issues or their thoughts and their worries and their monsters is I can say all I want, but at the end of the day, I don't turn around and do that stuff for myself. I can give them all the best advice, and then like next week I'm in their DMs or I'm talking to them on the phone saying the same thing that they told me, completely forgetting that I just gave them the same advice that they're just about to give me. So it's sometimes easier to give the good advice to others than to actually follow through on that advice for yourself.
Most definitely.
There was actually a part I just wanted to touch back on a little bit. I know probably DB that you're trying to maybe wrap up pretty quick here, and I know we'll try and do it here in the next little bit. There's actually one of these notes that I have on my screen about regulation and problematic games. I don't know if that's a typo, if it's actually meant to say problematic games. What kind of games would you deem as problematic? Is there specific genres of games? Are there styles that are possibly more so, like with MLB The Show or anything that might be considered a loot box game? Are those more problematic? And that leads me into like another question about when does escapism become video game addiction? When do they lead into one another? Is there a tie-in? Can they be two separate things? Or is it the video game they're addicted to, or is it just the feeling of escaping the addiction? And would it classify as a video game addiction if they're just hooked onto the feeling of getting away from real life?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say about that is that there's no type of video game that leads to problematic gaming, or violence or anger. There's no such thing as that within the game or outside of the game. It's kind of like, do violent games like Call of Duty lead to violence? No. If it did, there'd be a lot more violence in this world. It's kind of scary because, with as much as there is right now.
Right.
But with that being said, what research has shown is that it's not the type of game, but the competition within the game. And so, say if I am playing MLB The Show and I'm playing someone who I know is a lot better than me, who I have seen streaming, and I lose to them, I'm not gonna be too upset at that, or a person is not gonna be as pushed to be upset at that because they have that reality of, oh, this person's better than me. But when it comes to someone of equal player skill, that is where research has shown to have more outcomes of aggressive behaviors or problematic gaming. That it's not the type of game, but the competition within the game that can potentially lead to other behaviors.
Okay.
So it's more about the opponent or the perception of your opponent than it is anything else. Like if I come up against like some of the top MLB players, like Bairdian said, you just kind of let it go because you're just like, I know this guy. He's got that top 50 banner. He's gonna probably kick my butt. If I take anything good out of it, I'll take it. But if there's somebody that you don't know and they've got they're sitting at like that negative record is always the one that gets me. I'm a FIFA guy. It's always that guy that comes in with the crappier team that is like skilling around me and just destroys me like 6-0. And then I go up against the guy with the all icon team that wasted 14 mortgage payments to get his the best team possible, and I destroy him. And he's like, it's that vicious cycle. Like that guy pissed me off. I beat that other guy that should have beat me, and now he's pissed off at me. And it's like none of it makes sense, but it just happens that way. And it's more.
There's a definitive market in competitive video gaming to just be the person that always loses to who you're playing with, just so that they can have a glimpse of a good day. I want to tie it back into streaming a little bit. As streamers, I'm pretty sure DB has dealt with this and is open arms with it as well, as I am and a few others of our friends or colleagues. Using the streamer as a form of therapy. Lots of people think that we are therapists ourselves. I mean, if you streamed and they thought you were a therapist, they'd be right. But DB and I, we have kids. The best we can say is just don't kick your foot against the table and your foot won't hurt. Like that's the best advice we can give. We have life experience, but some people expect us to fix their problems. They come to us and do the thing. So from your point of view, as far as the streaming world is concerned within the video game realm, what would you say to streamers and viewers alike about their day-to-day issues, how to handle them and how to confide in, and who to go to, kind of thing?
Well, the honest part about this, and whether streamers understand this or not, that streamers have a lot of power. And when you think about the relationship between a streamer and the viewer, the streamer has all the power. They can do whatever they want. And the thing about what the viewer is doing when you see them coming to streams to kind of talk about their problems or vent their problems or look for solutions to their problem, they're seeing someone in this position of power that they feel that they can help them with, whether that streamer can do it or not. And you know, it's hopefully that whether the streamer can actually accept that they have all that power and they want to share that with the viewer by helping them through these things, and just being either a listening or a reading voice that they're just typing in the chat, or just someone there to be consistent. And it's not about having therapy over streaming, but just having that social support, because that's definitely what it is.
Okay.
Whether the streamer wants it or not, streamers have been a huge deal of social support for so many people because of their consistency of what they do, whether it's just playing a video game or just chatting. And I think that's something that streamers are, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, I know. I'm almost positive DB's the same way with his community. And I use the word community because it generates like the feeling of closeness and family, and what community is actually supposed to mean. If there's people in my community or communities that I'm a part of, I like to think that I'm an open, welcoming person. So yeah, I'm going to listen to your problems. I might not be able to help you with them, but we're going to try and find a solution some way or another, even if it's just listening. So I know on my end of things, yes, it's an open door, like come in and do your thing. If I feel like it's too heavy for my brand, for my content in chat, we're probably going to take it in a more private way. But it's just interesting because of your profession to kind of hear the take on like whether or not streamers are therapists and whatnot, because a lot of you look at like streamer Twitter, you get a lot of people kind of complaining about, we're not therapists, we're not here to help you, here to do a job and go home at the end of the day. But it's kind of like a kick in the pants to the people who are possibly paying your wages. Even if it's just like reading a paragraph of their day, it could just be like, I just need to offload this, that kind of thing. So that's kind of But I know I'm not a therapist. I'm not trying to solve your problems. I just know that everybody needs somebody to talk to sometimes.
Yeah.
It goes both ways too. Like, I mean, I preach a lot about it in my streams, and you know, we've had conversations about it in some of the just chatting sections, and I've been very open and honest with everything I went through last year with the thyroid cancer diagnosis, and like, it was the people within the community that helped me get through and deal with my stuff, where I was able to have a platform to openly talk about it. I mean, a lot of people talk about the call to the pen that I did with Jugsy Siegel, where I was completely open and candid about my own challenges in mental health. And that ended up bringing a lot of people around and into the community to hopefully hear my story, take some notes about how I dealt with things, and then try to apply them in their own way to their own lives. So as much as we do have this perception of power, and I truly believe as streamers, we do have a great deal of responsibility to project as much positivity and be there as a symbol of support, not necessarily the support itself. Because to Andy's point, I'm not a therapist. And the last thing I want to do is unintentionally give you a piece of ill advice that leads to some sort of harm or negative outcome. So if I'm not able to give you an example of how I dealt with something in my personal life that might correlate to what you're going through, I'm going to point you in the direction of a professional. Because I don't want, not only do I not want something to happen to that person, but as much as it may sound selfish, I don't want the responsibility of that person's well-being when it gets to that point.
Yeah. That goes back to with what Bairdian was saying about saying like, hi, how are you? And the person actually responds with, oh, I'm having a really shit day. Most of the time in my head, when someone's ever said, you know what, the day could be better, it's like such a shock where the thought process, oh my God, I hope he doesn't tell me. like it's kind of that process of, I don't want to know because I don't know if I can help. Like those kind of things. Like at this point, I know it's counterintuitive to the point that I just made about being there for people, but it's one of those things that it's like it's just part of the conversation. You're just supposed to get us to the next part of the conversation where you tell me that your kids are fine, that kind of thing. But I understand that. But the people who are more willing to say those things out loud in a casual conversations are probably the ones that you should probably sit down and listen to, because there's got to be a reason why they're saying it. I've actually had a lot of fun with this. I was a little bit quiet for the first because I was just kind of taking things in. Bairdian, you gave us a shit ton of information to read, and I can't tell you that I didn't. But like, it's there. I'm never going to delete it. I have it. There's things, cliff notes and whatnot that I looked at, and it was extremely informative of the things that I did look at. And there's tons of questions that I have that I wish I could ask for, but I know we're kind of running short of time here. It's been a blast. It was good. I love mental health conversations because I think it's so near and dear to so much that we do. So
I told Bairdian leading up to this thing that I'm like, listen, this is the first time I've gone into a podcast and been shitting my pants as the host because the guest was more prepared than we were.
Yeah, no, this is the Bairdian podcast, and we're just.
So, I mean, listen, I am incredibly grateful to have you as a member of the community and to have you here with us today. I consider you a friend. It's been great getting to know you, but now I'm gushing over you as a fan because I am so proud to call someone in your position a friend based on the conversation we've had today and how important this topic is. So for you spending the time to hang out with us and talk about this, and I hope you'll be willing to come back for a round 2, where we don't have to talk about mental health stuff. We can talk. I know you're a big sports guy, and I know you do some things with sports. If you want to plug away,
I won't use this time to plug that. But I just really appreciate y'all letting me come on and talk about this important stuff. It's obviously a important thing in my life. It pays the bills, but any chance I get to be able to have conversations like this, it makes me better as a clinician. And I just hope that the people who listen to this have as much fun as I had being in this. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk with y'all.
Yeah, the way I see it, I mean, we talk about streamers and having power and responsibility. We're sitting here around the 16 viewer mark listening to the podcast, not knowing how many people are actually here listening, but we've had a fairly successful turnout this evening as far as chat interaction and this kind of stuff. But even if we could get it through to 1 or 2 people that it's okay to talk about it, just to get it out there and reach out to a family, friend, a loved one. It doesn't matter if you're talking, it's better than not, or seeking professional help. Just being aware that it's okay. And even if it touches one person, this was more than worth it. But Bairdian, thank you for your insight. Thank you for your professionalism and everything.
And your time.
Yeah, and your time.
No
Sorry
problem
for
at
the
all.
beginning of this. It was it kind of got away from me with what we were doing. But Bairdian, I know you don't want to plug anything, but I hear you do your own thing with podcasts and stuff. But do you have social media, anything that the people can maybe follow you and get involved with? Let us know where you're at.
You can follow me at Twitter at Bairdian_slip. If I don't know you, you're not going to be able to follow me. But, reach out, request a follow, and we'll see what goes from there. I do have a podcast. It's called The Slip, where I talk Atlanta sports. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, all those good things.
Yes, we got it out of him.
Yeah, no. Sometimes what's he gonna do? Either not answer me and let it sit in silence. He's a professional. He's not gonna let dead air.
He folded to peer pressure.
That's right. You should really talk to someone about that.
Oh no! Here we go. Listen, Bairdian, Andy, I appreciate you, man, for another great episode. Bairdian, this has been my favorite episode by far, man. Thank you so much for taking a blast to hang out with us.
DB, take us out where we finding you. Tell us.
You can find me at Dadbods United, dadbodsunited.com, Dadbods United on Twitch, Dadbods UNTD on Instagram, United on Twitter. I'm all over the place. If you don't know where to find me by now, then I'm not doing my job right.
Dadbodsunited.com,
Where can they find you, Andy?
Mombodsunited.com, like all these places.
All the bods, all bods are happy bods.
Yeah, so I am Andy TTV on basically everything. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you. I am Andy TTV.
This week.
I am Andy.ca for my merch on Monday. Twitter for Parental Gamers is @GamersParental. You can either hit up the link tree for everything that we do. We'll post this on Monday morning. We do podcasts every 2 weeks, and so our next one would be what day would be the 12th of March. So we'll see you the 12th of March with another fantastic episode. Everybody, thank you for hanging out, and Bairdian, thanks again so much. We'll see you again.
All right, peace.
Later, buddy.